get started.
Welcome to episode 23 of Land the Plane Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Land the Plane Podcast. My name is Dustin.
I'm Jonathan, and we're actually recording this time.
Yes, we are. I'm excited because you're recording me this time. So
Yes.
I'm very excited to be a part of the show.
Yes, you had no squiggly lines,
Yeah, so
and that meant bad things.
I am back. Luckily, we only did like 30 seconds of the show. So.
Yeah.
But hey,
About this far right here.
if you are new to the show tonight, we appreciate you listening. And for everybody that continues to listen, thanks you for joining us again. But this is just a show about two guys who trying to figure out this thing called life and trying to walk through it. Trying. Keyword there. But if you are a believer, old believer, young believer, new believer, wherever you're at, non-believer, we hope you can listen to tonight's show. And
Somewhere on that believer spectrum.
Everybody's there somewhere.
Somewhere.
Right? Somewhere. So, Jonathan, you been doing okay, man?
I have been doing good. How have you been doing, Dustin?
I've been great. I appreciate you asking. We had this great bit in the last episode that didn't record, the last 30 seconds, where Jonathan didn't even care about how I was doing. You know?
I didn't. Not at all.
Didn't even care.
None.
So, well, here we are. We're kind of in a fun mood right now because something exciting is fixing to happen. You know, normally
I don't know if exciting is quite the word.
It's so exciting. Normally we start off the show with like a little story or something like that, something that's going on. But tonight we're going to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan, won't you tell them what you have on over there?
Well, to set the story, I have a Labradoodle, and she is like 10 months old, I think. 10-month-old Labradoodle.
Big dog.
Actually, is the very large dog. Y'all probably heard her barking and yelping in the last episode. And she has a bad tendency at times to run off. She loves to run, all those kind of things. We let her out and run around. But if she runs out of the yard and down the street, that can be bad. Mainly because one of our neighbors was having a lot of issues with squirrels and stuff like that, getting her at it. So she actually put out squirrel poison. And so we're having to train our dog, you got to stay in the yard.
Right.
Like, you got to stay here. And she has a bad habit of, we can go out and holler at her and she'll just kind of look at you and then turn around and run off. You know, dogs are like teenagers in some ways. Anyway, so we ended up getting a training collar.
Training collar. Yes, you
for
did.
her. Mm-hmm. And it arrived in a nice little Amazon package today.
Yep.
So we've been kind of playing around with that a little bit.
Yep. So.
Yep. Shoot.
One of us is wearing the training collar
right now,
and one of us has the controller to adjust the power and to deliver what would you call it? A training shock? Stimulation.
It's very stimulating.
So
yes,
we thought it would be
among
fun.
other things. I mean, honestly, just complete transparency here. It actually has a beep on it. Like hit the beep thing. You can
with the beep thing.
Yeah, there's.
Okay, here we go. Yep.
Yeah, that's one level of training. You can actually train them. Hey, if you hear the beep, and then there's actually a vibrate setting to where it'll vibrate. Let me see if I can hold it up.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, just vibrating, that kind of thing. And then there is another setting that delivers a little bit of a jolty.
Sorry about the other beep there. I gave it.
Got a beep.
So if you haven't figured it out, Jonathan is the one who's wearing the training collar. It's around his wrist, forearm area.
Yeah.
And we thought it appropriate before he used this on his dog to give it a try himself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm going to be nice to my dog. I'm not going to do anything to her that I wouldn't do to myself.
And we thought we'd share it with
Maybe.
you. And if I keep laughing, I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm so excited right now because I have the controller.
Yeah, and I can't really see what he's doing, so
Nope.
at any point he could,
I'm gonna be honest with you. Currently, I have it set on 40. This goes up to 99. Currently, it's set on 40, and it depends on how long I hold down the button, y'all.
Yeah.
It's great. If I just hold down the button, it won't stop. But I'm not going to be that mean. I'm just going to give it like a little 1 second burst. All right. So, Jonathan, you ready for 40? See how good 40 feels?
Not really.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Here we go.
Just go ahead.
All
I
right.
don't. Yeah. It's a unique sensation.
Y'all.
It's different.
He did a little pump in the chair. I ain't gonna lie to you. Oh shoot!
Oh man.
We got to get up there. You want to go like 5 at a time?
I guess.
Now,
I don't know.
You need to tell me when it's too much. All right?
It's not going to be too
Okay.
much, buddy. Whoa.
That was 45.
that wasn't quite like electric fence.
Oh goodness!
It wasn't up there.
Well, your fingers
But-
didn't move yet.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I do have it on there tight enough that I can feel that it's tight
Yep.
on me. But,
Okay. That's good to know.
Whoa.
That was 50. I felt like you
Yeah.
felt that one.
I did feel that one.
Dude, should I give you warning?
Nah, I don't care.
Oh. He's drinking coffee right now. It'd be a perfect time to do.
Drinking coffee.
Okay.
Might be letting some coffee go if it goes too much higher.
Yeah, this is the best day ever. I'm having so much fun right now.
Dustin can't win at any games that we play, so he has to bring out, cruel
Hey, it's your dog.
punishment,
It's your dog. You need to know what it's like,
trying to get back at me.
dude.
So,
We're
Anyway.
we're up to 60.
all right. Well, let's just go on into the podcast. Woo. And
Shoot.
and just kind of I'll let you just without warning hit me every once in a while.
Okay.
So why don't you tell people kind of what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing tonight?
Yeah, we want to do something a little different, involve our listening audience out there, you guys. And so we went out to the social medias all across the board there and just threw out some, hey, if you have a question, you have a topic, you want something else to talk about tonight, we want to do that. And so we, one of the responses we had was on Instagram. It's from a person whose name on Instagram is Aiden's Mama. And they asked about a specific set of verses. And so,
Yeah, and we couldn't have gone with like, I don't know, something easy like who was Jesus's mom, something like that.
well, that doesn't bring up a very long discussion. I mean,
Well, yeah, but it'd have been easier.
I think Aiden's mama had a very good question, and she specifically said Judges 19, specifically verses 22 through 30.
Old Testament.
Could you explain it? Jonathan, could you explain it?
I couldn't when I first read it. Wow, that was shocking.
I just asked you that question so I could shock you.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we get into like the specifics of it, Judges, definitely an Old Testament book.
Yeah.
Closer to the front of your Bible than the
Yeah,
back
maybe
of
we
your Bible.
should lay some ground rules. Kind of.
Yep.
Okay. So Judges, Old
Judges.
Testament. Gotcha.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha. I'm with you
Yep.
so far.
Yep. Old Testament.
Old Testament.
No, it's a book where they started they wanted like leadership amongst themselves. And so the Israelites didn't have kings and stuff like that as of this point. So the first kind of leadership that was put in place were judges.
Right.
And we're just in the middle of that kind of time frame of the Israelites. It's very, I won't say early on. I guess it is more early on in their
Pretty
in
early.
their time after they've left Egypt and went and established in the Promised Land. Many years after that, but kind of time frame. So they're just under leadership. There's many different judges, some popular judges. Jonathan, we can name a few.
Yeah, I mean,
Samson?
everybody's probably heard of, Samson.
We talked about him one night.
Yeah. Gideon, he was a judge.
Yep.
And then one of my favorite judges is Deborah. She was a judge.
Mm-hmm. There was all kinds.
I mean, there were several judges. Some are more popular than others. And the thing about the book of Judges is there's a repeating pattern all the way through it, to where God will the people will be close to God. They will start to stray away. He tries to get them to come back. They keep straying, and then finally God hands them over to be overthrown or something like that by like a foreign country or something. And then they cry out to God, and he raises up a judge to deliver them. And then there's peace for a little while. And then they start drifting away from God, doing what they want to do. And in fact, in the around where we're looking at tonight, like two different places very close here, it says that they were without a king, and people just did what was right in their own eyes. So it was one of those times when they were not, they drifted away from God, just doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the aspect of, I think another thing to keep in mind before we get into the story is the idea of there's 12 different tribes, I guess. Mm-hmm. You're going to hear about the tribe of Benjamin the most, I think, as far as specific one mentioned. But you got to remind you, once they came into the promised land, they kind of, these 12 different tribes, 12 different people based on, they spread apart, and they went and kind of settled in their own land. So they were all Israelites, and they were all together as a people, but they kind of almost made like their own little community, states, towns, those types of things.
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at in all this.
Yes.
So.
And another thing to look at, especially I think Old Testament, but we're anywhere in the Bible, just because it's recorded and just because it happens does not mean that it was good that it happened, Right. Yeah. And maybe relate that to, if you were reading something about World War II Germany, okay, and you read that, Hitler, put Jews in prison, and there was so many that were killed in the Holocaust, you were reading about those things. Just because it's in that book and it's a part of history doesn't mean that it was good or that God would approve of it. But somehow, sometimes when we're reading through the Bible, when things are happening in the Bible, we just automatically kind of think, well, it's okay with God.
Right, because it's in there.
Because it's in there.
He allowed it. He was okay with it.
Yeah.
He might even encouraged it,
Maybe not.
That's what I'm saying, what people tend to think. Sometimes.
Yes, people tend to think that. And so there's a lot of things that we do see in the Bible that are just statements about what is happening. I mean, because the Bible is a historical, it's in part a historical document. Mm-hmm. They were writing down what happened. Like the Chronicles. It's the chronicles of what was going on, Yep. Even the New Testament, Acts, it was the Acts of the apostles. It was what they were doing. So just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean that it's good or that God would approve of what was going on. So.
Yep. And we say all that to preface tonight's story. There's a specific reason, she asked about this story, chapter 19 of Judges, because it is a story that as we read it, you're going to realize that there's some very challenging material in there and some, oh my gosh, this is a horrible situation type of stuff.
And so we probably ought to throw out there too, this is not going to be very kid-friendly.
Yeah, you might
just
want to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, just because of actually what the topic is and all those kind of things. It's nothing that we're going to say. It's just, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, if you got some teenagers in the car, I wouldn't kick them out. But
it'd be fine.
You got some young ones, maybe. So, all right. Before we jump into scripture, I think we should get you a blast of 70 just to wake you up.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Did you feel it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I probably had to wake up the remote.
Here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Whoa! Oh, that one caught me off
We
guard.
gotta put sound bites. We gotta get some of these sounds.
Ooh,
That was that
yeah.
good one?
That was a good one right there.
That's 70, man.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Do you want me to go?
Let's go up to 80 one time and then let's call it quits.
Hey, like right now? You wanna
Yeah,
do it
let's
right
do it. Let's go. We gotta get into this.
80, here you go.
All right, ready?
I'm nervous for you.
Don't
man.
even tell me when you go. Whoa!
Yeah. Okay. That's probably good. You're taking it off. That's probably. I don't know how to turn this thing off.
Just leave it sitting
Oh
there.
my gosh, y'all! That was one of the highlights of my life right there. I wish I could have saw what I saw. All right, we're all fully awake. Hopefully you're awake there. So let's get into this thing.
All right, so I guess let's just kind of paraphrase what kind of set up the scene for what's going on. So apparently there was this a Levite, which if you know your history, he would have been of the priestly sect of the Israelites. He was living out in the hills, and it says that he acquired a woman from Bethlehem as his concubine. Couple of things there. Generally speaking, a concubine would have been maybe a slave girl. Men would frequently take more than one wife, or they would have several wives and then more concubines. A lot of that was for the having more kids.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you can have like one child a year. This way they could have more. And in looking into this one a little bit, it seems like this was more his wife, but because he either didn't give or just didn't have to give, like a betrothal, a money toward, giving the family for her, all that kind of thing, then it's concubine, not fully wife. So a little bit of weird stuff there for us because it's, that again, that's just kind of where they were as a people, that those kind of times and customs. So anyway, he had taken her. She was unfaithful to him and had left. And so she had returned to her father's house. He stayed for a while and then actually got up and went after her. And the Bible says he actually went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. So apparently he had, there were feelings for her. He felt her more than just a slave or whatever, because he could have gone and just told him that, she was unfaithful to him. And I mean, her parents could have kicked her out. She could have been destitute on the streets, whole 9 yards. But he didn't. He wanted to bring her back. And so he basically gets up and goes to her town, finds her at her parents' house. They are going to come back, but his father-in-law, the girl's dad, asked them to stay the night. So they actually end up staying like 5 days, which was kind of a good thing in a way. It was a kind of a ritualistic type thing where it was kind of making him part of their family. So again, custom, all those kind of things. So he was more son-in-law than just somebody that owned this, this girl's.
I want to add in there real quick, John, because I think it pertains to the rest of the story too. It's very, in this time, we need to understand the importance of how good it is to be like a good host, like how it is
Yes.
to take care of your guests and how important that is. And it's, if you don't take care of those who maybe come near you, come close to you, they're in need and those types of things, it's very a negative thing. You're really supposed to reach out and be a great host and provide for those that are staying with you. And that example was set by this man for sure.
Yeah. And so the fifth day, they stay for a while and probably stay too long, honestly, and then end up leaving kind of late in the day. And it says they departed, and I'll pick up in verse 10. It says, the man was unwilling to spend the night. He got up, departed, and arrived opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. The man had his 2 saddle donkeys and his concubine with him. When they were near Jebus or Jerusalem, and the day was almost gone. The servant, so there was not the concubine, but another servant, said to his master, "Please, why not let us stop at this Jebusite city and spend the night there?" Problem is, Jerusalem was under control at this time by the Jebusites. So this was an Israelite. They were Jebusites. He was, didn't want to go there. And he says in verse 12, his master replied to him, "We will not stop at a foreign city where there are no Israelites. Let's move on to Gibeah." "Come on," he said, "let's try to reach one of these places and spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah." So they continued on their journey, and the sun set as they neared Gibeah in Benjamin. Benjamin is one of the tribes of Israel. They stopped to go in and spend the night in Gibeah. The Levite went in and sat down in the city square, but no one took them into their home to spend the night.
Yeah, and that's where we come from, talking about that previous guy, because that's a big deal for you to come into town and for you to approach the town and nobody to take you in and see you, especially when you're healthy, when you appear healthy. It wasn't like he was a leper or anything like that.
Right.
He appeared healthy, had his concubine wife with him. There was no reason for other Israelites not to look at this guy and take him in. I mean, that would have been. I imagine he probably entered the town, especially since he left the other one, because he wouldn't have had this kind of welcoming. And now coming into this town, I'm sure he had expectations that it won't be
Somebody's
a problem.
Gonna take care. Yeah,
we're going to find somebody to take care of us, because he's probably been on the opposite side of that at points in his life, and knew the traditions and knew how they were supposed to.
And as Israelites, they were commanded. It was part of their law that if there is someone traveling, if there's a foreigner, you take care of them, So for them to go to the city square, that's where they would have found people that would have, if anybody was going to, they would have invited them into their home.
And no one did.
No one did.
And I don't think the city square was empty. No. I don't think it was one of those things that got there so late that nobody was out.
Right.
There was people there.
In the next verse it says, "In the evening, an old man came in from his work in the field." So that would have probably been sunset. He worked until sunset, then came in. So yeah, they weren't there late, because then this man came in after they were already there. It says he was from the hill country of Ephraim, which means he was not an Israelite. It says, but he was residing in Gibeah, and the men of that place were Benjamites. So he was actually a foreigner. So it's kind of ironic, that the Israelite is in a foreign town to him, but it should have been his people,
right?
And yet a foreigner is the one who comes in the foreign town. And he says, when he looked up and saw the traveler in the city square, the old man asked, "Where are you going? Where are you going, and where do you come from?" And he told him that we're traveling from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote hill country of Ephraim, where I'm from. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I'm going to the house of the Lord. No one has taken me into his home. Again, talking about being taken in to a home by, that should have happened. No one has taken me into his home, although we have. It says, "We have both straw and feed for our donkeys, and bread and wine for me, your female servant, and the young man with your servant. There is nothing we lack." In other words, we're not going to burden anyone.
Right.
We have everything what we need. We just, we kind of need a place to stay.
Really? Yes,
that kind of thing. So they're not wanting to be a burden to anybody. It says in verse 20, "Peace to you," said the old man. "I'll take care of everything you need. Only don't spend the night in the square." Should have been some foreshadowing there. So he brought him to his house and fed the donkeys. Then they washed their feet and ate and drank.
Okay, before we go on, I got to bring this up, because no spoilers. I'm not going to go ruin the story, but thinking when he says that do not spend night in the square. I mean, that's a pretty specific statement. Do you think that is we just don't want you to sleep in the square tonight? It's not a good place to sleep. You need a comfy bed. Or do you think he is warning them?
I think it's a warning.
Yeah, I think he knew what the town was for sure. And there's a reason, that I remember, if it was the law to bring this person into your home, if that was the law of the Israelites, they were supposed to take care and handle that for, and then nobody did it.
Yeah.
And
then he says,
don't stay in the square.
don't stay there.
That's two
Yeah.
red flags that the city ain't doing well.
Yeah.
Like it's not up to code.
And really, if we use our imaginations a little bit and kind of get into that, if we were watching a movie, strangers in the town square, and an old man comes and says, "Don't stay here. Come with me.
Get out of the square."
If we had some real creepy music in the background, we could. I mean, that'd be crazy. You know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's setting up actually, because it takes a turn sideways here. So verse 22, which is the beginning of what we were asked about. Verse 22 says, while they were enjoying themselves, eating dinner, eating, drinking, all those kind of things, all of a sudden, perverted men of the city surrounded the house and beat on the door. They said to the old man, who was the owner of the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so that we can have sex with him."
There you go.
That just happened.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know that we have to explain that. They're just hanging out, and men of the city start beating on the door. A lot like the two the angels that went to Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot, all that kind of stuff.
And if you want to hear more about that story, go back to our Halloween episode, because that's the story I told.
Yeah.
So, but I gotta keep thinking is I wonder if this older man was waiting for this to come. Like, was he just stalling? Was he just like, or was he hopeful that nobody maybe had seen him, or this would not happen? I mean, I gotta imagine he just didn't know for sure it was going to happen. But
yeah,
and
this goes back to say that for sure people saw him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah.
For sure people saw him, and they knew where they went. So I mean, they were watching.
This guy took them in, and he put himself in the line of fire of what these guys want. And then they came up to the house, beat on the door, and asked for the man. So very similar to Sodom and Gomorrah. Very similar.
Yes, very. So it says the owner of the house went out and said to them, "No, don't do this evil, my brothers. After all," and here it goes again towards the hospitality. "After all, this man has come into my house." In other words, he is under my protection. Anything that happens to him is, kind of bad on me, because I'm the one that's supposed to be protecting him. And says, "Don't do this horrible thing." If the story just ended right there, then, I mean, bad city. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. This is where things go even more south.
But kudos to this guy. Kudos to this guy.
Kudos to this guy so far.
So far for stepping outside and saying, trying to change these people's minds.
Yeah,
I mean, that was his goal. Go out there.
Because
stop
this was his city. These were people that he would have known. He even says, "Don't do this evil, my brothers." I mean, he's definitely going against the flow, big time here, and could possibly pay for it. In a bad way. So he's trying to stop the evil that he is seen going on, which, I mean, man, that is kind of a lesson that we should all take. It's kind of, what are we doing to try to stop evil that we see happening? Yeah. Are we? Yeah.
So before Jonathan continues to read this, if you're out there listening to this, hear what it said, and then take a breath, and then let's work it out together.
Yeah. So it's one of them things you got to read it 4 or 5 times and go, really? This is... All right, anyway, don't do this horrible thing. So he's trying to convince them not to. And then he says, "Here, let me bring out my virgin daughter and the man's concubine now. Use them and do whatever you want to them, but don't do this horrible thing to this man."
I use the ESV. I'm looking at the ESV right here in front of me, and it actually uses the word "violate" them.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna have to pause right there. and we're going to have to take a look at some things.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, go ahead.
Again, similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, we can't help but look back and see the comparisons of what's going on here. But yeah, I mean, basically to keep it pretty straightforward, the guy said, "Take my virgin daughter," who we all know what virgin means. It's, she's never been in this situation before. She's never had any type of sexual relationship. And now here she is being offered up to the people outside the crowd along with the concubine. Now, this is a terrible thing to do, okay? We don't want to downplay that at all. There's also a cultural reference here to, at the time, this was, terrible of the guy to do, but he was also, the men, I guess, Jonathan, don't let me put my foot in my mouth too far here, but the men at this time were held at a high regard. I'm not saying that's right, okay? But they were, and so he was doing whatever he thought he needed to do to protect that man.
Right.
And just the truth is they didn't put men and women on the same level. No,
not at all. Especially, and especially the concubine, the servant girl, that, he would not have. But for him to even, talk about bringing his own daughter out. And some, a couple of things that I read, one said that he felt like if they kind of offered them that it may, that the men may not even take them, but go back to, wherever they were, from or whatever, to get their minds off of the guy, kind of a redirection kind of thing or whatever. I don't know. I think it probably goes more to women were seen, and again, it is God's plan, and even we see this so many times in the Old Testament because of the customs of the day, and honestly, the customs of 2019 in some areas of the world.
Yes, definitely.
Let's not forget that.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to the culture of the day, women were not valued whatsoever. I mean, it's just all there was to it. Women were not treated equally. They were not seen as equals, anything like that. Let's go back to the beginning. Were women, upon creation, equal with men in their value? Yeah. Women are created in the image of God, just like men were created in the image of God. Women were taken from men, the rib, God used to create women. And so positionally there's a little bit of a difference, but in all ways, I mean, Jesus came to save men and women. He came to save humanity, so let's not think that because the Bible reports on this, females getting treated so poorly, that was ever God's plan. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think we'll actually see. And even what's the book right after Judges?
Ruth. No, yeah, it's Ruth. Right,
yeah, it's Ruth.
I stopped myself for a minute. I was like,
yeah, it's Ruth.
Trivia.
And for any kind of manuscript or any kind of book to have been written in this day and time about a woman and named after a woman, and the whole idea, the whole story is about a woman, been unheard of, And if you look at that story, there's a lot of parallels actually between Jesus and us, and in many ways we're Ruth in that, and the Boaz is kind of a Jesus figure where he comes in and rescues Ruth. So just how many women are named? There's several women named in the genealogy of Jesus there in Matthew. Mm-hmm. And so every place that we see in the Bible where God is pushing into, this idea is God is elevating the status of women. So let's not There is out there in the world so many people that will say that God places women below men and all these kind of things. There are certain ways that God has positioned, in I guess the way things are set up and those kind of things, but never do we get the idea from God that He values women any less than men.
Right.
That is something that is man-made and is an assault really upon the value of women that God has given women.
Even Jesus on the cross, I mean, He made a specific point on the cross when He was fixing to give up His life for somebody to take care of His mother.
Yeah.
Like told John, that's your mother now. You take care of her. Because He valued her so much. You know?
Yep. Good point. I hadn't thought about that.
So.
All right. So, verse 24, bring out my virgin daughter, this man's concubine. 25. But the men would not listen to him. Sounds like everything's getting better. But it doesn't. So it says the man, the Levite. Okay, the Levite.
Owner of the home.
No,
I'm wrong.
This is the Levite. This is the traveler.
This is actually him.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe it because it says, so the man seized his concubine and took her outside to them. So the man's daughter was not taken out, but the Levite took his concubine out and gave her to them. And it says they raped her and abused her all night until morning. At daybreak, they let her go. It says early that morning, the woman made her way back as it was getting light. Okay, so all night long. And it says she collapsed at the doorway of the man's house where her master was. And it says when her master got up in the morning, the little jerk was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so let's unload on this dude.
Yeah, he's trash.
Yeah.
It's just, I almost want to sit here and try to defend the guy in some way because I'm like, who could do this? Who could just take their wife, even though it's a concubine? We saw at some level that he had compassion for her,
right?
Because he went after her. But now he I say willingly, but maybe he thought it was the only thing that he could do. If he was
doesn't matter, die, punk.
I know, I agree with you, but like I'm trying to think of ways I could defend this guy because maybe there's something there, but I just can't think of it. You're gonna push her out there, close the door, and then go to bed? I mean,
no. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I can't. I don't know. I just can't put myself there because I'd be running out the door with a sword.
Yeah,
whacking at anything I see.
Gosh. I mean, I would have to die that night. I mean, I really would. I would have to die that night because I can't imagine a scenario where you think that's okay. Like that's the acceptable answer to you.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about one or two guys that were outside the door. We're talking about a town full of people that abused her until the morning.
Yeah. All right, just to finish up just a little bit. Okay, so he was sleeping. When her master got up in the morning, opened the doors of the house, and went out to leave on his journey. He was just going to leave.
Mm-hmm. It's the next day. Time to go.
There was the woman, his concubine, collapsed near the doorway of the house with her hands on the threshold. Get up, he told her. Let's go. But there was no response. She was dead.
She did, yeah. In a position of trying to get back into the house.
Yeah.
And nobody was there to open the door for her.
Right.
And to help her in.
So the man put her on his donkey and set out for home. All right, so we'll push the pause button right there. Man, I just anyway. Wish we could go back in time and
Yeah.
I'd take this shot collar. I'm sorry, this training collar.
Yeah.
And
Put on 99.
put it on 99 and tie it around him. And anyway, and so how do we get to, let's talk about this for a minute. How do we get to this point? Like how do we get to the point to where we see another human being as having so little value that we just throw them out there to, to be treated in such a way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sadly, in this world today, it's everywhere. I mean, this type of attitude, and it's a shame because when we look at each other and we get to the point where we look at each other and we don't see each other the way God intended us to see each other anymore. It's just become to the point where it's just, if you're not in my circle, if you're not in my everyday life, you really don't matter. You know, If you die, you die. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect my life. It doesn't change my life. And that's a shame, man. God created us all in his image. And we are all his people, and we are all his creation. It doesn't matter where we're from, what our background is, what color our skin is, what gender we are. None of that stuff matters. It matters that we are created in his image, and we belong to him. And when we look at each other, he wants us to look at each other like that.
Right.
And see each other as brothers and sisters in him, in his family. So to devalue it, I don't know how somebody does that.
Yeah.
I don't.
And, going back to the guy, that was going to offer out his daughter, same kind of thing, how he's devalued. But I did have this thought this afternoon. Do we, obviously we look at this and it's like, holy cow, he's throwing his daughter out there to be raped and violated, all those kind of things. And we instantly look at that and we're appalled and all those kind of things. And we should be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are there times that we as parents maybe expose our kids to things that maybe in a physical sense aren't as dangerous as that, but in a spiritual sense or in an emotional sense, can be life altering. What are your kids listening to? What are your kids watching? TVs, movies, video games, all those kind of things. What are we allowing? Maybe not that we're throwing our kids into, but what are we allowing our kids access to, that they are seeing, they are hearing, all those kind of things that can be lifelong damaging, and in many ways maybe even damaging their soul, that would draw them away from God instead of toward God. And are there things that we're allowing our kids to be exposed to that could have eternal consequences, not just the next 50, 60, 70, 80 years, but eternal consequences. So I think we need to be very careful about throwing this guy under the bus until we kind of do a self-check to see, are we really protecting our kids? Like as dads, are we protecting our daughters? Are we protecting our sons to the best of our ability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I used to use an illustration often about, we would let so much stuff in our house, like through the TV, through radio, through internet. We let all these things come into our house. And most people, and most men I know, wouldn't just, if an evil person was outside the door, a murderer or something like that, and was knocking on the door, we wouldn't just let them in and say, have at it, do your worst in our house. Mm-hmm. We just wouldn't do that. We would fight and we would protect. Most men I know would do that. I'm sure there's some that would not. But, but also expands this idea of as we let our children or even I even go as far as saying ourselves, and we exit the home. This thing that's supposed to be safe, this thing that we're supposed to create it where we can put a wall around our family and protect it. And now are we willfully sending them out into very, very dangerous places, very dangerous situations. And when I say dangerous, sometimes that physically means dangerous situations. So maybe we're allowing our kid to go get in a car with 4 other kids and go driving down the street like crazy, or are we putting them out there in situations where we're allowing them to step away from some sort of protection that we have to offer them? And sometimes when you protect people and when you're trying to do the best, they may not always like it. They may not always be the best thing that they think is for them, but in reality, if you're going with the right motives and you're doing the right things, so yeah, I thought you said don't. Before we throw this dude under the bus, I would like to throw the guy under a bus, like literally throw him under a bus. But it's true. Anytime you hear those stories and you start getting accusational towards somebody, you usually kind of have to stop and examine yourself and say, what am I doing? What are some practical things that I need to change where I'm putting my kids or myself or those around me in harmful situations? Yeah, for sure.
And this is something that we actually looked at in our small group last week, the week before. What's the purpose of the Bible and the purpose of these stories, those kind of things? It's for us. Not just for us to know the history, but it's to affect us now. What do we need to be learning from this? What do we need to be changing about ourselves? What is the Holy Spirit speaking to us through this? And that's one thing that I, felt like he spoke to me was, how well are you protecting your family? You're getting onto this guy. How well are you protecting your own? All right. So he basically gets up, puts her on his donkey, it goes back toward home. And he says in verse 29, when he entered his house, so he got back home, he picked up a knife, took hold of his concubine, and this is disgusting, cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and then sent her throughout the territory of Israel. And again, significance in the number 12. There's 12 tribes of Israel. Everyone who saw it said nothing like this has ever happened or has ever been seen since the day the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt to this day. Think it over, discuss it, and speak up. All right. So at that point, we flip to chapter 20. And I'll just go through this, kind of paraphrasing it a little bit. They basically kind of put together a council, apparently. Mm-hmm. Leaders got together to discuss this. It made a huge impact. And the Israelites asked, how did this outrage occur? And so then it says in verse 4, the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, answered and basically goes through the story. And he basically, through this whole kind of thing, it's kind of, they get together and they want vengeance. They want somebody to pay for this. And so they know that it is a city of Benjamin. It's a city within the tribe of Benjamin in their area, Gibeah. And so they basically cast lots to see, hey, should we go and go up against this city? And the lots, kind of seeking God out, says yes. So they basically gather an army together and they go out. They talk to the tribe of Benjamin saying, hey, listen, this is what's happened. Send these people out. Like, go to this city, get these people. We want them. We're going to kill them all for acting in such a way. We're going to kill the men of this city. And
I just want to point out too that I think it's interesting about this because we were talking a minute ago about it being the way they valued women over men and stuff. But here it is. Keep in mind that as horrible as this story is, and sometimes we wonder why this happened. Here is men responding to it and saying that was unacceptable. That is not who we are or what we're going to allow or what we're going to do. We can't stop every bad thing from happening, but how we respond, are we going to stand up for what's right, is very important.
Yeah. And picking up in verse 11, it says, so all the men of Israel gathered united against the city. Then the tribes of Israel sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this outrage that has occurred among you? Hand over the perverted men in Gibeah so we can put them to death and eradicate this evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not obey their fellow Israelites. Instead, they gathered together from their cities in Gibeah to go out and fight against the Israelites. So in other words, not just this city of Gibeah, but Benjamites from around the whole area gathered together to basically, this is basically, I think, the closest thing that we can kind of look at here. This is civil war.
Yeah, for sure.
The Benjamites, it's like Tennessee and Texas and Arkansas and Georgia, and just gathering up an army and going to fight each other. Mm-hmm. There's really no difference. And the first day, the Benjamites come out and they basically kill. It says the Israelites, apart from Benjamin, rallied 400,000 armed men. 400,000. The Benjamites had 26,000, and they go out, start fighting, and oddly enough, basically the men of Gibeah and stuff, they slaughtered 22,000 men of Israel. So the Benjamites actually won the battle on the first day.
Yeah, they won that day.
And this is pretty interesting too. Verse 18. It says they went to Bethel, this is before the battle, and inquired of God. The Israelites asked, who is to go first and fight for us against the Benjaminites? And the Lord answered, Judah will be first. So in this, going after kind of the, revenge about this treatment of this woman, Judah is first. Anything about the tribe of Judah?
You're looking at me with the raised eyebrows. Yeah.
A lion from the tribe of Judah.
Let's say that's the tribe that Jesus descended from, right?
Yeah.
That was in the Lion of Judah. It's a good song. Sorry.
So basically, the tribe that Jesus came from, that's the one that God said, send them first. I just think that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So first day, Benjamites won. Killed 22,000 Israelites. Second day, they actually go to back to God, and be like, "Hey, God, we feel like we're in the right here. What's going on here?
Why'd we lose?
Why? And the Lord answered, fight against them. Second day, they slaughtered an additional 18,000 Israelites. So up to this point, we've now 22,000 Israelites plus 18,000 Israelites. 40,000 men have died from Israel, and Benjaminites are still going. So they go back to God a third time, and it's like, hey, are we supposed to do this, or are we supposed to stop? Because they were losing, they didn't know what was going on. And God says, fight, because I will hand them over to you tomorrow. And they go out, they basically put an ambush, and they take over. They basically kill everyone, every armed man in the area. I think like 600 escape, basically. Mm. So they kill about 26,000 Benjaminites. So now the death toll is up to like 66,000.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so many things can be pointed back to, how much of this would have happened if the Levite had just ran out, protecting his wife, and just ran out there with the sword and started hacking. He would have gotten killed.
Yeah.
But
now 66,000.
66,000. And one question that I have is why did 40,000 of the Israelites have to get killed? You know, and I was
It's a great question, and I'm just shooting from the hip here. Are you willing to stand up for what is right, even at great costs? This is just from not putting much studying into the story myself, over long. But I can't help but think of that. We're talking. First of all, the value of a woman's life must be pretty great. 60-something thousand people the next day lose their life over what happened to her. But I also see, those first two losses. When we stand up for what's right and things get difficult, are we willing to continue to stand firm, even if we're getting the backlash, even if we're getting beat up, even if we're facing the hard times? Are we continually willing to fight that fight?
Yeah.
And go back to it every day. And that they were, they found their strength in God, and He prevailed them in that final day.
Yeah.
But are you willing to keep fighting for it? Are you willing to stand up? I mean, that's just the first thing that jumped out to me about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of it too was God's punishment to them, because all the Israelites were not doing what they should have been doing, during this whole time, and so I think God was kind of saying, you're not innocent in this. You're not innocent. These kind of things should have been dealt with prior to this.
Yeah.
Things should not have gotten this bad. Had they been doing what they should have been doing, men like this would not have been allowed to live. Yeah, according to the law, all those kind of things back in that day.
So are you saying
that kind of evil would have been eradicated from the presence of God and His people before they had gotten to this point?
So you're saying we should have accountability and holding people in check before it gets that bad?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up the story, and I hope we've kind of answered the overall question that Aiden's mama had.
Yeah, it's a great question.
But I do want to land the plane on something that may put us a little bit out there a little bit. But man, I just could not read through this story without thinking of this. And it's just hit me really, really hard today that, this girl, most likely a very young girl, very defenseless, very, not able to stand up for herself in any way. I mean, there's nothing that she could have done. She should have been the one that was defended. She should have been the one that was fought for before she died. She should have been the one that was cared for. She was, if anybody was, and she had done wrong by leaving at the beginning of the story and those kind of things. But I feel like if there was anybody that didn't deserve this, I think it was her.
Yeah, she didn't have any say in the matter.
She didn't have any say in the matter.
Nobody asked her. Nobody.
She had no rights. She was given no privilege of rights anyway.
And I guarantee you, she didn't want it.
Right. And she was pushed into this situation. She did not have the choice to make, and she was killed and literally ripped apart. And guys, there are millions of unborn children who are basically receiving the same verdict, in America. And I think just with the news and, there is a very large media coverage of it right now because of some laws that have been passed in New York and now I believe in Virginia, that up until birth, that our children, the most defenseless, can literally be, ripped apart when we should be defending them the most. And man, I just think we are, if we don't do something, if we don't stand up, I just think we are just as wrong and just as evil and just as vile as this man who just turned around and handed this girl out to this mob. And I think that God's punishment for that could be and will be just as severe. God has not changed; His laws have not changed. I just think this is a kind of a wake up call, and and it's not just saving from the womb, but it's kind of womb to tomb.
Yeah.
We need to value life. We need to value the life of the unborn. We need to value the life of the born and unwanted. We need to value the life of kids in desperate situations. We need to value the life of the homeless. We need to value the life of those who can't, speak up for themselves and all those kind of things. So we need to value life, not just the unborn, but just value life.
Yep. That's a great point, Jonathan. And just as we mentioned earlier, I can't fathom a situation where I would, if I was that man, where I would ever take that woman and put her out the door. I just can't imagine it, that you would devalue her so much. And I think about what you're talking about with abortion and things, that there's value. There's value there. It's a life. It's living. And nobody will ever convince me otherwise.
No.
Nobody will ever convince me. You can bring whatever scientific report you want. You can make whatever argument. You will never change my mind on that once that life is conceived. It's life.
Yeah.
It just is. And it has value. It has value. Oh. Anyways.
This is probably the most sobering.
I know.
Most sobering episode we've ever done.
Yeah, and it's one of those. A lot of times we try to avoid some current events. It's not because we're not passionate about it, because we are. We also want this show to be a bit of an escape sometimes. But in a situation like this, where the scripture so just hits you in the face with it.
Yeah.
And we don't know why. We can sit here and wonder why. Why did God let this happen? Why? Or we can look at it and understand the value of human life and the value of how you're supposed to treat people. And when you're in Scripture, that's what you got to do. You got to look at. You got to go around it. You got to figure it all out.
Yeah, you can't skip over it just because you don't like it. Otherwise, my Bible would be real short.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the show.
Yeah, man. Get us out of here.
We thank y'all so much for listening. Just a couple of things. Remember, you can always visit our website, landtheplane.today. Not .com, but .today. You can check out the podcast there, or just keep up with what's going on. You can send us an email, landtheplanetoday@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on Instagram and Facebook like Aiden's mama did, and let us know some topics y'all want to hear about, some things y'all want to discuss. Get in on the discussion with us, and go back to that post. And when you see the post get dropped for this episode, if you got some thoughts on this, we'd love to hear from you and talk with you there on it. Of course, you can always follow us on Twitter too, as well as @landtheplane247. We'd love, you can go out anywhere podcasts are found and give us a subscribe. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, anywhere, Spotify. Get us subscribed. That way you keep up with all the newest and latest episodes. And if you want, you can even go out to YouTube now. That show comes out, it usually comes out a few days later than it does the audio version only, but you can check it out on YouTube as well and give us a like and subscribe there. It would be a big help. And also, I haven't mentioned this in a while, but if you want to help support the show, you can go out to TeePublic and search Land the Plane. And we have some T-shirts out there if you want to get you an old T-shirt or a mug or something. So just encourage you to do that if you want to help support the show. And again, I had to say thank you for a while, but I want to thank you, Corey Stiles, for our intro music. Man, every time I hear it, I just kind of start bobbing my head, get excited about the podcast. So I appreciate him doing that for us. So that's it. That's the show. Jonathan, play the music. Let them go home.
Let's get out of here. See you guys. Thank y'all.
Bye, y'all.